Hey guys, how's it going? It's the college sports super fan. And look, I know it's been a minute. Got kind of busy, caught up with some other things, but I'm planning on getting more consistent with my uploads here. Starting off with this, I've got five college football players who I think could break out this season as we're getting closer and closer to this epic college football season. Let's get right into it. Okay, now a quick disclaimer before we get into talking about some of these players. I refrain from talking about quarterbacks just because they're already being talked about so much, and I would really like to focus on more of the skill position players and some key defensive players and maybe people don't know a whole lot about that could break through and have a monster season here in 2025. Okay, everybody, we're going to start off with my favorite team, the Tennessee Volunteers. As well, you could probably tell I don't really keep it too hidden, as you can see, but they got a receiver named Mike Matthews who's coming up here. He's a former five-star recruit. I expect him to have a breakout season. Here's why. Tennessee is losing a lot of production in the receiver room. There's no more Dante Thornton. There's no more Brew McCoy. And Squirrel White has also moved on to go to Florida State. Now, of course, there's been all the craziness in the offseason as Nico Iamalieva left. He's gone to UCLA. But almost like a weird quarterback trade situation, Tennessee gets what was going to be UCLA's quarterback, former App State quarterback Joey Aguilar, who I think could be one of the more underrated quarterbacks in this upcoming college football season, particularly in the SEC. Aguilar threw for over 3,000 passing yards last year at App State, and the Sun Belt is not a super weak conference. So I think he's going to step in with a ton of experience, but he'll be looking for some receivers. Of course, there's Chris Brazzell as well that comes back, but he wasn't all too impressive last year. I think Mike Matthews, the former five-star recruit with track speed and great size, is going to end up being one of the big breakout stars of this upcoming college football season. Next up, I'm going to talk about Jordan Marshall, a running back for Michigan in this upcoming season. Now, the Michigan Wolverines, obviously, they finished the year really strong after really struggling in the beginning of last year. They end up obviously beating Ohio State, beating Alabama. Everybody knows this at this point, and they're getting a ton of hype heading into this season because of the number one overall quarterback recruit, Bryce Underwood. However, Bryce Underwood is still just a true freshman. He's definitely going to start, but there's going to be some growing pains, and Michigan definitely wants to run the football. We've seen how Michigan is over the years. They want to run the football. They weren't that great at running the football last year. This year they're going to want to take a big step up. Now, Jordan Marshall last year was just a freshman. He's coming into his sophomore season. He has a ton of hype. He came from Cincinnati, Ohio in 2023 in his senior year of high school. He was named Ohio's Mr. Football, a big time honor. So he comes in. Now he will have to compete with Justice Haynes, who's coming in as the other running back. But regardless of whether Marshall ends up being the number one running back, he's definitely going to at least be the number two running back on that depth chart. And Michigan, especially with the freshman quarterback, I think is going to run the football enough to where Marshall is going to have opportunities. And this team is always really good on the ground, especially when it comes to their shifts with the offensive line. I think Marshall is going to have a big time year running the football this season and should be a breakout star to watch for in the Big Ten. Okay, now to transition over to Michigan's hated arch rival, Ohio State, the defending champions of this season. Their team, of course, is going to have Jeremiah Smith, the top receiver and maybe the top player in the entire country. But they're going to need that number two option. Emeka Egbuka is gone, and they've got a new young quarterback in Julian Sayin, who I believe is going to be really good. He's got a ton of hype. Nick Saban, of course, wanted him when he was trying to get him over to Alabama right before Saban retired, which is what led to Sayin going to Ohio State instead. I think the kid's got a lot of potential, but it can't just all be on Jeremiah Smith. Otherwise, this Ohio State passing game is going to struggle. Carnell Tate, we saw flashes of what he could be last season. In the Cotton Bowl, he had 7 catches for 87 yards, while Texas's defense was doing a great job of shutting Smith down. That was one of Jeremiah Smith's worst games of that playoff run. And then Carnell Tate also had 2 touchdown catches on the road against Northwestern, his hometown team. So I think Carnell Tate is going to be a really good option. He's been a guy who's been hyped up for a while, had a crazy recruiting situation. Lots of teams wanting him. He originally went to one place, then another place, eventually ends up at Ohio State. I think he's going to become the number 2 option, and therefore he's going to have a really, really good season with the Buckeyes. Now I'm going to finish this list off with a couple of defensive players, and we're going to start off with Xavier Harris. Xavier Harris out of Ole Miss. He's heading into his junior year, and he's probably one of the more established players among these breakout players that I have on this list. But to me, I feel like Xavier Harris is about to take the next huge step in his development towards becoming potential NFL defensive lineman. He played in all 13 games for Ole Miss last season, and he started 3 of them. I think he's going to start every single game for the Rebels this season, as they are losing Walter Nolan, who, of course, went off to the NFL. Xavier Harris is going to have to fill that hole in the middle of that defensive line. I think he's a guy who is going to take that step forward and will be able to accomplish that for Ole Miss this season. And finally, the Missouri Tigers are going to be looking to replace the player who was their tackles for a loss leader and sacks leader, and that was Johnny Walker, who has now moved on. So, how is Missouri going to replace Johnny Walker Jr.? Well, they bring in a big time transfer in Damon Wilson II coming in from Georgia. Damon Wilson II, we saw some of his potential last year as he was part of that Georgia Bulldogs very talented defensive line rotation. He had 3 sacks, 5.5 tackles for a loss, and let's see, I've also got 22 tackles as well. So we saw that in just a limited rotation. Even if he was coming back for Georgia, he would still be considered to be possibly a breakout player for 2025. However, he's transferred away from Georgia. He's going to SEC foe Missouri, and Missouri is where he's going to get a lot more playing time, and his development continues. I think he could become one of the SEC's elite defensive linemen here in 2025. So there you have it. That's 5 college football players that I would expect to break out in this 2025 season. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Which players you think are going to break out in this upcoming 2025 season? Which players you guys are most excited for? And let me know what kind of video topics I should be doing next in my next video as we get closer and closer to this college football season. I am so excited. I'm going to get back to uploading regularly, and let's go. Thank you all so much for watching the College Sports Superfan.